Chapter 1. Alicia Barrison Diary. July 16. I never thought I'd be longing for rain. We're into our 4th week of the heat wave, and it feels like an endurance test. Each day seems harder than the last. It doesn't feel like England, more like a foreign country, Greece or somewhere. I'm writing this on Hamster Heath. The whole park is still with red-faced, semi-naked bodies. Like a beach or a battlefield, on blankets or benches or spread out on the grass. I'm sitting under a tree in the shade. It's 6 o'clock and it has started to cool down. The sun is low and red in a golden sky. The park looks different in this light, darker. Shadows, brighter colors. The grass looks like it's on fire, flickering flames under my feet. I took off my shoes on my way here and walked barefoot. It reminded me of when I was little and I would play outside. It reminded me of another summer, how like this one, the summer Mom died. Playing outside with Paul, cycling on our bikes through golden fields, dotted with wild daisies, exploring abandoned houses and haunted orchids. In my memory, that summer lasts forever. I remember Mom and those colorful tops she would wear, with the yellow string straps so flimsy and delicate, just like her. She was so thin, like a little bird. She would put on the radio and pick me up and dance me around to pop songs on the radio. I remember how she smelled of shampoo and cigarettes and Nevada hand cream, always with an undertone of vodka. How old was she then? 28? 29? She was younger than now. That's an odd thought. On my way here, I saw a small bird on the path, laying by the roots of a tree. I thought it must have fallen from its nest. It wasn't moving, and I wondered if it had broken its wings. I stroked its head gently with my finger. It didn't react. I nudged it and turned it over, and the underside of the bird was gone, eaten away, leaving a cavity filled with maggots. Fat, white, slippery maggots, twisting, turning, writhing. I felt my stomach turn. I thought I was going to be sick. It was so foul, so disgusting, deathly. I can't get it out of my mind. July 17. I've started taking refuge from the heat in an air-conditioned cafe on the high street, Cafe del Artista. It's icy cold inside, like climbing into a fridge. There's a table I like by the window where I sit drinking iced coffee. Sometimes I read or sketch or make notes. Mostly I just let my mind drift, luxuriating in the coldness. The beautiful girl behind the counter stands there looking bored, staring at her phone, checking her watch, and sighing periodically. Yesterday afternoon, her sigh seemed especially long, and I realized she was waiting for me to go so she could close up. I left reluctantly. Walking in this heat feels like wading through mud. I feel worn down, battered, beaten up by it. We're not equipped for it, not in this country. Gabriel and I don't have air conditioning at home. Who does? But without it, it's impossible to sleep. At night, we throw off the covers and lie there in the dark, naked, drenched in sweat. We leave the windows open, but there's no hint of a breeze, just hot, dead air. I brought an electric fan yesterday. I set it up at the foot of the bed on the top of the chest. Gabriel immediately started complaining. It makes too much noise. We'll never sleep. We can't sleep anyway, at least we won't be lying here in a sauna. Gabriel grumbled, but he fell asleep before I did. I lay there listening to the fan. I like the sound it makes, a gentle whirring. I can shut my eyes and tune into it and disappear. I've been carrying the fan around the house with me, plugging it in and unplugging it as I move around. This afternoon I took it down to the studio at the end of the garden. Having the fan made it just about bearable, but still too hot to get much work done. I'm falling behind, but it's too hot to care. I did have a bit of a breakthrough. I finally understood what's wrong with the Jesus picture, why it's not working. The problem isn't with the composition, Jesus on the cross. The problem is this. It's not a picture of Jesus at all. It doesn't even look like him. Whatever he looked like, because it's not Jesus. It's Gabriel. Incredible that I didn't see it before. Somehow, without intending to, I put Gabriel up there instead. It's his face I painted, his body. Isn't that insane? So I must surrender to that and do what the painting demands of me. I know now that when I have an agenda for a picture, a predetermined idea how it should turn out, it never works. It remains stillborn, lifeless. But if I'm really paying attention, really aware, I sometimes hear a whispering voice pointing me in the right direction. And if I give in to it as an act of faith, it leads me somewhere unexpected. Not where I intended, but somewhere intensely alive, glorious. And the result is independent of me, with a life force of its own. I suppose what scares me is giving in to the unknown. I like to know where I'm going. That's why I always make so many sketches, trying to control the outcome. No wonder nothing comes to life, because I'm not really responding to what's going on in front of me. I need to open my eyes and look, and be aware of life as it is happening, and not simply how I want it to be. Now I know it's a portrait of Gabriel. I can go back to it. I can start again. I'll ask him to pose for me. He hasn't sat for me in a long time. I hope he likes the idea and doesn't think it's scandalous or anything. He can be funny like that sometimes. July 18. I walked down the hill to Camden Market this morning. I've not been there in years, not since Gabriel and I went together one afternoon in search of his lost youth. He used to go when he was a teenager, when he and his friends had been up all night, dancing, drinking, talking. They'll turn up at the market in the early morning and watch the traders set up their stalls, and try and score some grass from the restaurant dealers hanging out on the bridge by Camden Lock. The dealers were no longer there when Gabriel and I went to Gabriel Dismay. I don't recognize it here anymore, he said. It's a sanitized tourist trap. Walking around today, I wondered if the problem wasn't that the market had changed as the fact Gabriel had changed. It's still populated by 16-year-olds embracing the sunshine, sprawled on either side of the canal, a jumble of bodies, boys in rolled-up shorts with bare chests, girls in bikinis overalls, skin everywhere, burning, ridding flesh. The sexual energy was palpable, their hunger, impatient thirst for life. I felt a sudden desire for Gabriel, for his body and his strong legs, his thick thighs laying over mine. When we have sex, I always feel an insatiable hunger for him, for a kind of union between us, something that's bigger than me, bigger than us, beyond words, something holy. Suddenly I caught sight of a homeless man sitting by me on the pavement, staring at me. His trousers were tied up with string, his shoes held together with tape. His skin had sores and a bumpy rash across his face. I felt a sudden sadness and revulsion. He stank of stale sweat and urine. For a second I thought he spoke to me, but he was just swearing to himself under his breath. Fucking this and fucking that. I fished for some change in my bag and I gave it to him. Then I walked home, back up the hill, slowly, step by step. It seemed much steeper now. It took forever in the sweating heat. For some reason I couldn't stop thinking about the homeless man. Apart from pity, there was another feeling, unnameable somehow, a kind of fear. I pictured him as a baby in his mother's arms. Did she ever imagine her baby would end up crazy, dirty, and stinking, huddled on the pavement, muttering obscenities? I thought of my mother. Was she crazy? Is that why she did it? Why did she strap me into the passenger seat of her yellow Mini and spit us throughout that red brick wall? I always liked that car. Its cherry canary yellow, the same yellow as in my pink box. Now I hate that color. Every time I use it, I think of death. Why did she do it? I suppose I'll never know. I used to think it was suicide. Now I think it was attempted murder. But I was in the car too, wasn't I? Sometimes I think I was the intended victim. It was me she was trying to kill, not herself. But that's crazy. Why would she want to kill me? Tears collected in my eyes as I walked up the hill. I wasn't crying for my mother or myself or even that poor homeless man. I was crying for all of us. There's so much pain everywhere and we just close our eyes to it. The truth is we're all scared. We're terrified of each other. I'm terrified of myself and my mother in me. Is her madness in my blood? Is it? Am I going to? No. Stop. I'm not writing about that. I'm not. July 20. Last night, Gabriel and I went out for dinner. We usually do on Fridays, date night he calls it, in a silly American accent. Gabriel always downplays his feelings and makes fun of anything he considers soapy. He likes to think of himself as cynical and unsentimental. But the truth is he's a deeply romantic man. In his heart, if not his speech, actions speak louder than words, don't they? And Gabriel's actions make me feel totally loved. Where do you want to go? I asked. 3 guesses. Augusto's? Got it in 1. Augusto's is our local Italian restaurant just down the road. It's nothing special, but it's our home away from home, and we've spent many happy evenings there. We spent around 8 o'clock. We went around 8 o'clock. The air conditioning wasn't working, so we sat by the open window in the hot, still, humid air and drank chilled, dry, white wine. I felt quite drunk by the end, and we laughed a lot, at nothing really. We kissed outside the restaurant and had sex when we came home. Thankfully, Gabriel had came around to the portable fan, at least when we're in bed. I positioned it in front of us, and we lay in the cool breeze, wrapped in each other's arms. He stroked my hair and kissed me. I love you, he whispered. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He knows how I feel. But I ruined the mood, stupidity, clumsily, by asking if he would sit for me. I want to paint you, I said. Again? You already did. That was 4 years ago. I want to paint you again. Uh-huh. He didn't look enthusiastic. What kind of thing do you have in mind? I hesitated and then said it was for the Jesus picture. Gabriel sat up and gave a kind of strangled laugh. Oh, come on, Alicia. What? I don't know about that, love. I don't think so. Why not? Why do you think? Painting me on the cross? What are people going to say? Since when do you care what people say? I don't. Not about most things, but I mean, they might think that's how you see me. I laughed. I don't think you're the Son of God, if that's what you mean. It's just an image, something that's happened organically while I was painting. I haven't consciously thought about it. Well, maybe you should think about it. Why? It's not a comment on you or our marriage. Then what is it? How should I know? Gabriel laughed at this and rolled his eyes. Alright, fuck it. If you want, we can try. I suppose you know what you're doing. That doesn't sound like much of an endorsement, but I know Gabriel believes in me and in my talent. I'll never be a painter if it weren't for him. If he hadn't needled and encouraged and bullied me, I'd never have kept going during those first few dead years after college, when I was painting walls with Jean Felix. Before I met Gabriel, I lost my way, somehow. I lost myself. I don't miss those druggy parties who passed for friends during my 20s. When I ever saw them at night, they vanished at dawn like vampires fleeing the light. When I met Gabriel, they faded away into nothing, and I didn't even notice. I didn't need them anymore. I didn't need anyone now that I had him. He saved me, like Jesus. Maybe that's what the painting is about. Gabriel is my whole world, and has been since the day we met. I'll love him no matter what he does or what happens, no matter how much he upsets me, no matter how untidy or messy he is, How thoughtless, how selfish. I'll take him just as he is until death do us part. July 21. Today, Gabriel came and sat for me in the studio. Not doing this for days again, he said. How long are we talking about? It's going to take more than one session to get it right. Is this just a ploy to spend more time together? If so, how about we skip the preamble and go to bed? I laughed. Maybe afterwards, if you're good and don't fidget too much. I positioned him standing in front of the fan. His hair blew in the breeze. How should I look? He struck a pose. Not like that, just be yourself. Don't you want me to adopt an anguished expression? I'm not sure Jesus was anguished. I don't see him like that. Don't pull any faces, just stand there and don't move. You're the boss. He stood for about 20 minutes, then broke the pose and saying he was tired. Sit down then, but don't talk. I'm working on the face. Gabriel sat on the chair and kept quiet while I worked. I enjoyed painting his face. It's a good face, a strong jaw, high cheekbones, elegant nose. Sitting there with the spotlight on him, he looked like a Greek statue, a hero of some kind. But something was wrong. I don't know what, maybe I was pushing too hard. I just couldn't get the shape of his eyes right, nor the color. The first thing I ever noticed about Gabriel was the sparkle in his eyes, like a tiny diamond in each iris. But now, for some reason, I couldn't catch it. Maybe I'm just not skilled enough, or maybe Gabriel has something extra that can't be captured in paint. The eyes remained dead, lifeless. I could feel myself getting annoyed. Fuck, I said. It's not going well. Time for a break? Yeah, time for a break. Shall we have sex? That made me laugh. Okay. Gabriel jumped up, took hold of me and kissed me. We made love in the studio, there on the floor. The whole time I kept glancing at the lifeless eyes in Gabriel's portrait. They were staring at me, burning into me. I had to turn away, but I could still feel them watching. Chapter 2. I went to find Michaelides to report on my meeting with Alicia. He was in his office sorting through piles of sheet music. Well, he didn't look up. How did it go? It didn't, really. Michaelides gave me a quizzical glance. I hesitated. If I'm going to get anywhere with her, I need Alicia to be able to think and feel. Absolutely. And your concern is? It's impossible to get through to someone when they're so heavily medicated. It's like she's 6 feet underwater. Michaelides frowned. I wouldn't go that far. I'm not familiar with the exact dose she's on. I checked with Yuri, 16 milligrams of Respirando, a horse dose. Michaelides raised an eyebrow. That's certainly quite high, yes. It could probably be reduced, you know. Christian is the head of Alicia's care team. You should talk to him about it. I think it'll sound better coming from you. Michaelides gave me a doubtful look. You and Christian knew each other before, didn't you? At Broadmoor? Very slightly. Michaelides didn't respond immediately. He reached over to a little dish of sugar almonds on his desk and offered me one. I shook my head. He popped an almond in his mouth and crunched it, watching me as he chewed. Tell me, is everything friendly between you and Christian? That's an odd question. Why do you ask? Because I'm picking up on some hostility. Not on my part, but on his? You'll have to ask him. I have no problem with Christian. Perhaps I'm imagining it, but I'm sensing something. Keep an eye on it. Any aggression or competitiveness interferes with the work. You two need to work with each other, not against each other. I'm aware of that. Well, Christian needs to be included in this discussion. You want Alicia to feel? Yes. But remember, with greater feeling comes greater danger. Danger for whom? For Alicia, of course. Michaelides whacked his finger at me. Don't forget she was highly suicidal when we first brought her here. She made numerous attempts to end her life, and the medications keep her stable. It keeps her alive. If we lower the dose, there's every chance she'll be overwhelmed by her feelings and be unable to cope. Are you prepared to take that risk? I took what Diomedes said seriously, but I nodded. It's a risk I believe we need to take, Professor. Otherwise, we'll never reach her. Diomedes shrugged. Then I shall talk to Christian on your behalf. Thank you. We'll see how he reacts. Psychiatrists don't often respond well to being told how to medicate their patients. Of course, I can overrule him, but I don't tend to do that. Let me approach the subject with him subtly. I'll tell you what he says. It might be better not to mention me when you talk to him. I see. Diomedes smiled strangely. Very well. I won't. He pulled out a little box from his desk, sliding off the cover to reveal a roll of cigars. He offered me one. I shook my head. You don't smoke? He seemed surprised. You look like a smoker. No, only the occasional cigarette, just now and then. I'm trying to quit. Good for you. He opened the window. You know that joke and why you can't be a therapist and smoke? Because it means you're still fucked up. He laughed and popped one of the cigars into his mouth. I think we're all a bit crazy in this place. You know that sign they used to have in offices? You don't need to be mad to work here, but it helps. Diomedes laughed again. He lit the cigar and puffed on it, blowing the smoke outside. He watched him enviously. Chapter 3. After lunch, I prowled the corridors looking for an exit. I was intending to sneak outside and have a cigarette, but I was discovered by Indira by the fire escape. She assumed I was lost. Don't worry, Theo, she said, taking my arm. It took me months to get my bearings around here, like a maze with no way out. I still get lost sometimes. I've been here 10 years, she laughed. Before I could object, she was guiding me upstairs for a cup of tea in the goldfish bowl. I'll put the kettle on. Bloody miserable weather, isn't it? I wish it would just snow and get it over with. Snow is a very powerful imaginative symbol, don't you think? Wipes everything clean. Have you noticed how the patient keep talking about it? Look out for it, it's interesting. To my surprise, she reached into my bag and pulled out a thick slice of cake wrapped in cling film. She thrust it into my hand. Take it, walnut cake. I made it last night for you. Oh, thank you. I know it's unorthodox, but I'll always get better results with difficult patients if I give them a slice of cake in the session. I laughed. I bet you do. Am I a difficult patient? Tara laughed. No, although I find it works just as well on difficult members of staff too. Which you're not either, by the way. A little bit of sugar is a great mood enhancer. I used to make cakes for the canteen, but then Stephanie made such a fuss. All this health and safety nonsense about food being brought in from the outside. You'd think I was magically in a vial. But I still bake a little on the sleigh. My rebellion against the dictator state, I try it. This was not a question, but a command. I took a bite. It was good. Chewy, nutty, sweet. My mouth was full, so I covered it with my hand as I spoke. I think this will definitely put your patients in a good mood. Indira laughed and looked pleased. I realized why I liked her. She radiated a kind of maternal calm. She reminded me of my old therapist, Ruth. It was hard to imagine her ruffled or upset. I glanced around the room as she made the tea. The nurses' station is always the hub of a psychiatric unit. Its heart is heart. Staff flow to and from it, and it is where the ward is run from day to day, at least where all the practical decisions are made. The Goldfish Bowl was the nurse's nickname for the station, as its walls were made of reinforced glass, meaning staff could keep an eye on the patients in the recreational room, in theory at least. In practice, the patients, however, restlessly outside, staring in, watching us, so we were the ones under constant observation. The small spaces did not have enough chairs, and the ones that were They were generally occupied by nurses typing up notes, so he mostly stood in the middle of the room or leaned awkwardly against a desk, which gave the space a crowded feel, no matter how many people were in it. "Here you are, love." Dora handed me a mug of tea. "Thanks." Christian ambled in and nodded at me. He smelled strongly of the peppermint gum he was always chewing. I remember he used to smoke heavily when we were at Broadmoor together. It was one of the few things we had in common. Since then, Christian had quit, got married, and had a baby girl. I wonder what kind of father he made. He didn't strike me as particularly compassionate. He gave me a cold smile. "Funny seeing you again like this, Theo. A small world. In mental health terms, it is, yes." Christian said this as if to imply he might be found in other larger worlds. I tried to imagine what they might be. I could only imagine him in the gym or in a scrum on the rugby field. Christian stared at me for a few seconds. I had forgotten his habit of pausing, often lengthily, making you wait while he considered his response. It irritated me here just as much as it had done at Broadmoor. "You're joining the team at rather an unfortunate moment," he said eventually. "The sword of Damocles is hanging over the grove." "You think it's as bad as that?" "It's only a matter of time. The trust is bound to shut us down sooner or later. So the question is, what are you doing here?" "What do you mean?" "Well, rats desert a sinking ship. They don't clamber on board." I was startled by Christian's undisguised aggression. I decided not to raise to the bait. I struck. "Possibly, but I'm not a rat." Before Christian could reply, a massive thud made us jump. Elif was on the other side of the glass, hammering at it with her fist. Her face was pressed up against it, squashing her nose, distorting her features, making her almost monstrous. "I won't take this shit no more. I hate this. These fucking pills, man." Christian opened a small hatch in the glass and spoke through it. "Now is not the time to discuss this, Ela. I'm telling you, I'm not taking them no more. They make me fucking sick." "I'm not having this conversation now. Make an appointment to see me. Step away, please." Ela scrolled deliberately for a moment. Then she turned and lumbered off, leaving a faint circle of condensation where her nose had been pressed against the glass. "Quiet character," I said. Christian grunted. "Difficult," and Dara nodded. "Poor Elif. What's she in for?" "Double murder," Christian said. "Killed her mother and her sister. Suffocated them while they slept." I peered through the glass. Elif joined the other patients. She towered over them. One of them slipped some money into her hand while she pocketed. Then I noticed Alicia at the far end of the room sitting by herself, by the window, looking out. I watched her for a moment. Christian followed my gaze and said, "By the way, I've been talking to Professor Diomedes about Alicia. I want to see how she does on a lower dose of risperidone. I brought her down to 5 milligrams. "I see. I thought you might want to know since I heard you saw her for a session." "Yes. We'll have to monitor her closely to see how she reacts to the change. And by the way, next time you have a problem with how I medicate my patients, come to me directly. Don't sneak off to Diomedes behind my back." Christian glared at me. I smiled back at him. "I didn't sneak anywhere. I have no problem talking to you directly, Christian." There was an uncomfortable pause. Christian nodded to himself, as if he made up his mind about something. "You do realize Alicia is borderline. She won't respond to therapy. You're wasting your time." "How do you know she's borderline if she can't talk?" "Won't talk." "You think she's faking?" "Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. If she's faking, then how can she be borderline?" Christian looks irritated. Indira interrupted before he could reply. "With all due respect, I don't feel umbrella terms like borderline are particularly helpful. They don't tell us anything very useful at all." She glanced at Christian. "This is a subject Christian and I disagree on frequently." "And how do you feel about Alicia?" I asked her. Indira pondered the question for a moment. "I find myself feeling very maternal toward her. That's my countertransference. That's what she brings out in me. I feel she needs someone to take care of her." Indira smiled at me. "And now she has someone. She has you." Christian laughed at an annoying laugh of his. Forgive me for being so dense, but how can Alicia benefit from therapy if she doesn't talk? Therapy isn't just about talking, Dara said. It's about providing a safe space, a containing environment. Most communication is nonverbal, as I'm sure you know. Christian rolled his eyes at me. Good luck, mate. You'll need it. Chapter 4. Hello, Alicia, I said. Only a few days had passed since her medication had been lowered, but the difference in Alicia was already apparent. She seemed more fluent in her movements. Her eyes were clearer, the foggy gaze had gone. She seemed like a different person. She stood at the door with Yuri and hesitated. She stared at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time, taking me in, sizing me up. I wondered what she was concluding. Evidently, she judged it safe to proceed and walked inside. Without being asked, she sat down. I nodded at Yuri to go. He deliberated for a second, then shut the door behind him. I sat opposite Alicia. There was a silence for a moment, just the restless sound of the rain outside, raindrops drumming against the window. Eventually I spoke. How are you feeling? No response. Alicia stared at me, eyes like lamps, unblinking. I opened my mouth and closed it again. I was determined to resist the urge to fill the void by talking. Instead, by remaining silent and just sitting there, I hoped to communicate something else, something nonverbal, that it was okay for us to sit together like this, that I wouldn't hurt her, that she could trust me. To have any success at getting Alicia to talk, I needed to win her trust, and this would take time. Nothing would be accomplished overnight. It would move slowly like a glacier, but it would move. As we sat there in silence, my head started to throb at the temples, the beginning of a headache, a telltale symptom. I thought of Ruth, who used to say, in order to be a good therapist, you must be receptive to your patient's feelings, but you must not hold on to them. They are not yours. They do not belong to you. In other words, this dumping in my head wasn't my pain. It belonged to Alicia. And this sudden wave of sadness, this desire to die, did not belong to me either. It was hers, all hers. I sat there, feeling it for her. My head pounding, my stomach churning, for what seems like hours. Eventually, the 50 minutes were up. I looked at my watch. We have to finish now. Alicia lowered her head and stared at her lap. I hesitated. I lost control of my reserve. I lowered my voice and spoke from the heart. I want to help you, Alicia. I need you to believe that. The truth is, I want you to help you see clearly. At this, Alicia looked up. She stared at me, right through me. You can't help me, her eyes shouted. Look at you, you can barely help yourself. You pretend to know so much and be so wise, but you should be sitting here instead of me. Freak, fraud, liar. As she stared at me, I became aware of what had been troubling me the whole session. It's hard to put into words, but a psychotherapist quickly becomes attuned to recognizing mental distress. From physical behavior and speech and a glance in the eyes, something haunted, afraid, mad. And that's what bothered me. Despite the years of medication, despite everything she had done and endured, Alicia's blue eyes remained as clear and cloudless as a summer day. She wasn't mad. So what was she? What was the expression in her eyes? What was the right word? It was... Before I could finish the thought, Alicia leaped from the chair. She threw herself toward me, hands outstretched like claws. I had no time to move or get out of the way. She landed on top of me, knocking me off balance. We fell to the floor. The back of my head hit the wall with a thump. She bashed my head against the wall again and again, and started scratching, slapping, clawing. It took all my strength to throw her off. I scrambled along the floor and reached up to the table. I groped for the attack alarm. Just as her fingers grasped it, Alicia jumped on me and knocked the alarm from my hand. Alicia! Her fingers were tight around my neck, gripping, choking. I groped for the alarm but couldn't reach it. Her hands dug deeper. I couldn't breathe. I made another lunge. This time I managed to grab hold of the alarm. I pressed it. A wailing scream instantly filled my ears, deafening me. I could hear the distant sound of a door opening and Yuri calling for backup. Alicia was dragged off me, releasing her chokehold, and I grasped for breath. It took 4 nurses to hold Alicia down. She writhed and kicked and fought like a creature possessed. She didn't seem human, more like a wild animal, something monstrous. Tristan appeared and sedated her. She lost consciousness. At last, there was silence.